Hi guys, welcome back to The Dog That Saved Me. Today we're going to be talking about the differences between post-traumatic stress disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is going to continue our conversation on PTSD awareness through the month of June. And so the first thing is going to be talking about the differences between PTSD and complex PTSD and kind of why knowing the difference is important. So the first thing to understand, I know I've mentioned this before and I'll continue to mention it over and over and over, PTSD is a brain injury, not a mental illness. And so I'm going to be comparing PTSD and complex PTSD to a broken arm. So to get PTSD, you have to be exposed to a trauma. Usually it's one, maybe 2 or 3 times. Typically it's one instance where you're exposed to trauma, and that trauma may or may not cause PTSD. Getting PTSD from being exposed to a trauma is similar in many ways to breaking your arm. Now, the people who seek help, counseling, treatment right away, it's like they broke their arm, they got a cast, and they heal fairly quickly. The people who get PTSD, they might not realize they have PTSD, they might refuse treatment, whatever it may be. It's like having a broken arm that has not been put in a cast and it heals incorrectly. And so you go with that throughout your life, and you have that for however long it takes until you realize that your arm might not function the way it's supposed to, it might be painful. Breaking your arm is like having PTSD. Now, that's one spot, right? The difference between PTSD, breaking your arm in one spot, and having it heal incorrectly, and complex PTSD is you get complex PTSD from being exposed to long-term trauma. These are people like prisoners of war, people who've had severe childhood abuse or in extremely abusive situations, kidnapped victims. These people are the type of people to develop complex PTSD. That's like they broke their arm many times, and each time that arm broke, it healed incorrectly. So you can imagine the difference between a broken arm with one break and a broken arm with many breaks. The arm with many breaks is going to take a lot longer to heal. In fact, in some instances, that arm is going to be so mangled, tangled, and beat up that honestly, I'm not a medical professional, but I would assume that a doctor would probably amputate that arm instead of trying to heal it. Of course, you can't amputate the brain, and so healing the arm with complex PTSD, the arm that's been broken over and over and over again and healed wrong, it's going to have a lot more issues than the arm that just had one break. That's the easiest way to explain the differences. PTSD is from 1, maybe 2 or 3 instances of trauma. Complex PTSD is due to long-term trauma, repeated instances over a long period of time. That's why treatment for both of them is different. Of course, it's individualized for each person, but PTSD treatment is a lot simpler, a lot more straightforward than complex PTSD. They're both horrible, they're both terrible. It's just complex PTSD is much more severe. And so those are the basic differences between the two. So whenever we're talking about treatment, you can imagine the arm that just got broken once. You re-break the arm, you reset it. You go through physical therapy, you do all these things, and that arm has a much higher success of being healed and being back to functionality. Of course, there probably will be some pain left, there might be some slight issues, but it's going to be a lot more close to normal then the arm that's been broken many times has healed incorrectly each time. Starting the healing process for that, you would have to re-break each individual piece and reset each individual piece. You can't do it all at once. And so this might take a lot of time. This takes a lot more time. And in fact, most people who have complex PTSD never heal from it at all. Not ever. And that's just the unfortunate truth and the nature of it. There will be struggles that they will face for the rest of their lives because there's no way to heal all of that damage. Especially those who went through that severe trauma as a child. Your brain is developing like crazy when you're a child, so imagine comparatively that was your arm, breaking your arm over and over again as a child. All that bone growth, all that development, your arm, it would be impossible to heal it. And so those who went through severe childhood trauma, it's very rare for them to heal from all of that. Now there's parts that get better, there's treatments, there is hope, and there is ways for them to get better, ways for them to have a better quality of life. But there's still that trauma. Like I said, I'm not a medical professional, but I can imagine if that were an arm, a doctor would amputate it, and you can't amputate the brain, you just have to work on healing it. There's no cure. There are treatments, but those treatments may or may not be effective in the long run, but there's always ways to try and get better little by little. Both PTSD and complex PTSD do have a lot of similar symptoms. Complex PTSD, their symptoms seem to be more severe than those with just regular PTSD. I don't want you guys to think that I'm lessening the struggle and the hardships that come with PTSD. Having PTSD in and of itself is very hard because your brain just does not know how to handle that trauma. Your brain is injured from that trauma. Complex PTSD is just a more severe form. That's all it really comes down to. Whereas one you might be able to heal from, depending on the trauma, depending on how long you had it, a few months to a year or two. Complex PTSD will never be healed in most cases. There are, like I said, the few that do, but for the most part they don't. So that's the main differences between complex PTSD and regular PTSD. That's pretty much all I've got for you guys today. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and comment down below with any of your thoughts or opinions. That's all I've got for you guys this time. I love you. I'll see you next time.